Hello, everybody. Jonathan Pulley here with West Coast Weather. Today is January 19th, and we're going to talk about this pair of low pressure systems moving around the west coast of the United States, including British Columbia as well. These are bringing some precipitation, some rain showers to parts of California, Washington, and Oregon as we go through today into tomorrow. And then we're going to talk about the additional systems that are going to be on their way, as we can see on the satellite right now. If we look at the satellite right now down near California, we can see that here on the Radar Omega app, we can look at the winter storm watches and winter weather advisories. If we click on this, we can see what the winter storm watch is for. This is for heavy snow, possible 8 to 16 inches between 6,000 and 7,000 feet. And with 1 to 3 feet possible above 7,000 feet, winds could gust over 45 miles per hour. So some heavy snow over the next day or two is possible for parts of the Sierra Nevadas. There's also some mixed precipitation with some possible freezing rain and some additional snow for the Spokane and parts of eastern Washington and northern Idaho areas. But that should end as we go through later this afternoon and evening. So a lot to talk about in this video. So without further ado, let's get right into the forecast. Now we're looking at trough and ridge positions on the European and GFS model. The European is here on the left and the GFS is here on the right. Here's Washington, Oregon, California, British Columbia up here. Hawaii is down over here. Here's Mexico down here. They give you an idea of where we're looking at. You can see that our pair of troughs and low pressure over the west coast and off into the Gulf of Alaska. And if we play this through, you can see that our first trough kind of merges with another system and continues to bring some precipitation chances as we go through later Saturday in the Sunday of this weekend. And this trough kind of just opens up over much of the west coast on both the European and the GFS, so good agreement in this. But as we go through later on Monday and the Tuesday, we could get a slight break in some places on the west coast as this trough kind of moves off into the southwest United States and parts of Mexico. But then you can see we have another trough moving up towards the Pacific Northwest and parts of British Columbia as well. You can see pretty good agreement still in the models as we go through the Tuesday and Wednesday time frame. This will bring some more precipitation and such as we go through later the early next week and into the middle part of next week as well. But you can see that the GFS is a little stronger with this. European model is a little weaker, but generally precipitation chances will continue on both models. But then you can see as we go through later next weekend, looking a bit into the fantasy range, you can see the GFS builds this ridge over like parts of Montana and Idaho, while the European model builds it over Washington State and Oregon and also British Columbia and Alberta up there. So this would be less precipitation on the European model. And there's also potential for some atmospheric river activity as we go through later next week, but this wouldn't be as favorable of a setup for an atmospheric river. The GFS, on the other hand, kind of gives us this ideal look for if you're wanting some atmospheric rivers into parts of the west coast, because we're kind of in between this trough and ridge here on the west coast, so this kind of brings the moisture transport right into the region. But you can see models are kind of disagreeing at this point. You can see the European model builds this big ridge of high pressure that would bring some warmer and nicer conditions to parts of the region. So we'll just continue to look at that as we go. And now looking at the European model and the GFS again, European model on the left, GFS on the right. This is precipitation water anomaly. This is basically showing us how much water vapor there is in the atmosphere compared to normal. And you can see reds are above normal, blues are below normal. And you can see all this moisture coming off the Pacific Ocean running into the United States and parts of Canada. It's just continuing as we go through later next week. But then I want to show you this on both models as we go through the Thursday, the Friday time frame next week. You can see this powerful atmospheric river setting up with a connection all the way from the subtropics near Hawaii. So a classic Pineapple Express. But you can see that the GFS with that ridge a little farther eastward allows this atmospheric river to come right into the west coast. And this would be more impactful, bringing the snow levels really high, causing potential for some flooding issues. The European model also has it, but it's a little farther out west, and most of it goes up north towards Alaska and parts of northern British Columbia, and wouldn't impact the other parts of the west coast as much. It would still bring rainfall, just not as much, which is better because all the new snowpack we just got over the last couple of weeks would start melting somewhat with that and cause some flooding issues. And then you can see as we go through the additional week, as we go to the last week of January, you can see additional possible systems and atmospheric rivers in that time frame. But we'll continue to look at that as we go. But showing you the wider view of things, here's Russia over here, Alaska, British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, California, Hawaii down here. This is looking at the jet stream well in the upper atmosphere. This kind of gives us a good idea on what the weather pattern how the weather pattern could unfold over the coming weeks. You can see that the jet stream's kind of wavy right now, bringing systems and ridges and then systems coming in. But if I play this out on the European model, you can see as we go through later in the January and possibly early February, we get this classic El Nino jet extension over the Pacific Ocean. This is what would help to bring potential for some atmospheric river activity as we go through the 1 to 2 week time frame. And we saw this set up in December as well. It kind of turned out not as active of weather here on the West Coast, but this is a bit different, and this could bring some active weather to the West Coast. And we already saw this play out in December, as I said, so maybe we'll get some more cold air after this happens, but we'll just have to wait and see that as we go through the couple week time frame. Now taking a closer look at things, here's British Columbia, Washington, Oregon, California. This is looking at mean sea level pressure and showing us where our high pressure and low pressure areas are. You can see as we go through this weekend, the low pressure systems kind of dance off the coast before weakening, and that ridge kind of builds over the area for a bit, keeping a lot of California dry possibly as we go through Monday and Tuesday and the early Wednesday. But you can see that system kind of clips the Pacific Northwest with some moisture as well. And then you can see the potential for this atmospheric river as this ridge of high pressure builds over the interior West Coast. But then we're kind of in between this little channel of moisture right here, where we get the low pressure up to our northwest, and then we get the high pressure to our southwest, and this kind of transports the moisture along this boundary. And this is kind of a classic signal for an atmospheric river. Now looking at 6-hour precipitation types in inches, you can see that our low pressure systems kind of moving towards California and the West Coast over the coming days, bringing some moderate to heavy precipitation to some places. There is some potential for some flooding in Southwest Oregon, parts of Northern California as we go through later this week, but it's not going to be too bad. And you can see this precipitation moving through parts of the area on Monday and the Tuesday, before we look to get a bit of a break for at least most of California as we go through later on Tuesday, before that system clips the parts of Washington, Oregon, Southwest BC. And then there's our potential atmospheric river bringing that snow to parts of the higher elevation, also some heavy rain to the lowlands and the mountains as well. Now looking at lightning flash density on the European model, you can see that there's going to be some chances for some lightning as these low pressure systems move into California and Southwest Oregon. And it looks like the best chances for thunderstorms is going to be later on Sunday into Monday of this weekend and early next week for parts of California down there. Now looking at the total precipitation inches on the national blended models, if I just let this play out and show you this animation, we can see all the precipitation starting to build up on the West Coast as we go through the 10-day time frame. Some pretty high totals showing up for parts of the Cascades and parts of the Sierra Nevada mountains. So still relatively beneficial, but we really want to watch how high the snow levels get, because we can start causing some flooding concerns as we get some of this moisture, a lot of this moisture into the West Coast. And you can see even some of the Bay Area maybe approaching 1 to 2 inches, maybe over 3 inches for parts of the California coastline, especially the Oregon and Washington and Southwest BC coastlines, with even over 10 inches showing up on the average from the national blended model. So definitely a lot of rain coming to the West Coast over the next 10 or so days. Now looking at total snow in inches on the national blended models, if I play this out, there's not going to be a ton of snow with these systems, except for parts of the Sierra Nevadas where a couple feet of snow can be expected over 6,000 feet in elevation as we go through later next week. But you can see maybe a couple feet in some of the higher elevation of British Columbia and parts of the Oregon and Washington Cascades, but not big snow totals in the mountains as we go through this time frame, unfortunately. Now looking at 10-meter wind gusts in the European model, you can see these low pressure systems are going to bring some gusty winds to parts of the Oregon and California coastlines, maybe parts of the northwest interior of Washington as well. And then you can see as we go through, there's additional systems possible with maybe some more gusty winds. Not really expecting any windstorms or anything at this time. Now looking at the 2-meter max temperatures on the national blended models, here's tomorrow, Saturday. You can see high temperatures still staying in the 40s for much of Washington, 30s over in the eastern parts of the states, also getting into the 50s and 60s for California and the central valleys, which is pretty normal down there. As we go through Sunday, generally the same. But then you can see as we go through Monday and Tuesday, highs start approaching into the 50s for Washington and Oregon as that Pacific moisture starts moving into the area. Even some high temperatures starting to approach 40 degrees for parts of the Columbia Basin and eastern Washington. So definitely a warm up for most of the region as we go through later this week and into next week, as that Arctic air kind of is just completely out of the picture now. It's just completely worn out and moved across the rest of the country. Now looking at minimum temperatures as well, you can see temperatures still getting in the 30s next couple of days for parts of western Washington and Oregon, but that freezing rain and snow potential is all gone. No more snow is really expected in the lowlands as we go through this next week or so. But you can see still low temperatures getting below freezing. There could be some isolated icy issues as some of the snowfall melts in parts of eastern Washington and Oregon, but you can see low temperatures in the 40s and 50 for most of California as well, which is kind of normal down there. And you can see that kind of continues as we go through next week as that Pacific moisture moves into the region. Now looking at a nice graph from the National Weather Service of Medford, Oregon, showing the excessive rainfall outlook as we go through Saturday morning and the Sunday over here, and then Sunday to Monday morning. So there's potential for some marginal to slight flooding as we go through this time for parts of the coastline, the coastal mountain ranges, southwest, extreme southwest Oregon, and parts of northern California. And do not drive in standing water, turn around, don't drown. The power of water is often taken lightly, but it only takes about 12 inches of water to carry away most cars, so be safe. Some good warning there from the National Weather Service of Medford, Oregon. Now looking at the National Weather Service of Sacramento, California, showing the timeline for the storms. The storm systems are going to start coming in later tonight and in the Saturday for most area. The brunt of the storm will be arriving on Sunday and into Monday as well, for potential for some gusty winds, showery, and possible thunderstorm potential in the valley. Snow levels getting over 6,000 feet. So it's definitely some moderate impacts possible with that before we look to start drawing out through the Tuesday and Wednesday timeframe, where showers and snow are going to be gradually decreasing. Now looking at Storm 1 precipitation forecast from the National Weather Service of Sacramento, California. Again, snow levels 6,000 to 7,000 feet. And you can see slick roadways, longer than normal commute roadway, ponding, and minor nuisance flooding of poor drainage areas possible. You can see some pretty hefty tools over much of the northern and central California, including the Bay Area. San Francisco getting over an inch possible with this first storm system. Some snow also possible in the Sierra Nevadas. Not expecting anything super major up there, but there could be some possible chain controls up there, so just be careful if you're going up there. Second storm also brings some decent precipitation, possibly even more for San Francisco. So the 2-day storm totals could be approaching 3 inches. Moderate impact, slick roadways, possible isolated valley thunderstorms on Monday as well with that system. Also potential for more snow with that as we go through later this weekend and into early next week, but not really expecting too much on that time frame. And now looking at the National Weather Service of Los Angeles / Oxnard, if I'm saying that right. So looking at for possible rain timing and thunderstorm chances as we go through this weekend and the early next week, you can see most of the precipitation chances are about from later tonight all the way through Monday night, with some showers possible in San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara counties as we go through Tuesday and in the Wednesday. But you can see best thunderstorm chances as we saw on the models is about Sunday night into Monday night. So just keep an eye on the skies out there and near Los Angeles and parts of Southern California. Precipitation for Saturday and Sunday for Los Angeles, you can see maybe generally a ½ inch to an inch for most of the southern coastline down there, with maybe some over an inch precipitation totals for parts of the coastal mountain ranges. Now looking at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, you can see above average temperatures for much of the continental United States, some below average temperatures for Alaska. This is because that Pacific moisture is going to be spreading over much of the United States, bringing mild temperatures. After all of our Arctic air, this is kind of a relief for some, except those that want more snow, of course. And then for the 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook, above average for much of the West Coast, maybe a below average for parts of Southern California. Some of that storm track through the January 24th through 28th time frame starts looking like it's going to be aiming towards central to northern California northward. Looking at the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, this is for January 26th through February 1st. Pretty crazy, we're already talking about February already. And you see above average temperatures generally showing up as that Pacific moisture continues to stream into the region. Above average temperatures for much of the Pacific Northwest, including parts of Northern California, possibly dry for parts of the Southwest United States, including Arizona and Utah and Nevada, as that storm track looks they continue northward. So still plenty of stuff to look at as we go through later January and in the possibly in early February as well. Well, that's it for this video. I hope everybody found this enjoyable and informative. We've got these first two systems moving in the most of the West Coast, bring some rain showers over much of the region, bring some potential for some flooding issues as we go over into Southwest Oregon and parts of Northern California, especially with this next system coming up Sunday through Monday and in the parts of Tuesday as well. Additional systems possible after that, and some potential for some atmospheric river activity as we go through later next week. But we'll continue to look at that as we go. Take care, God bless, and I'll talk to everybody in the next video.